A reading from the book of Wisdom. God didn't make death. God takes no delight in the ruin of anything that lives. God created everything so that it might exist. The creative forces at work in the cosmos are life-giving. There is no destructive poison in them. The underworld doesn't rule the earth. Doing what is right means living forever. Hear what the Holy Spirit is telling God's people.
Thanks be to
God. Our psalm will be read responsively by half verse, with the congregation reading the parts in bold. This is from Lamentations. This I call to mind.
And therefore I have hope.
The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases.
His mercies never come to an end.
They are new every morning.
Great is your faithfulness.
The Lord is my portion, says my soul.
Therefore I will hope in him.
I don't know if this is on or if it's picking me up. Okay, good. I am so glad to be back here with you guys, and I am sorry to read off my phone. It feels very weird to read off my phone in church. There's a little bit of backstory I need to give about this piece. In the publishing world, in the art world, there are often opportunities to submit your work for journals, magazines, publication, things like that. And many of them have no guidelines. Many of them have very strict guidelines. Maybe they're looking for poems only from people who live in Iowa. There is a journal out of Tucson that only publishes poems about birds. And there are quite a lot of publishing calls for marginalized communities. And this poem addresses that and what it means for me. You say, publishing opportunities for the marginalized. And my heart skips a rhythm that would match a footfall if I had one. All I have is this thrumming, this rhythmic roundness, this forward motion, but never a step in my direction. You say marginalized, and I see Venn diagrams, my friends in all their uniqueness, people I love and support. You say, we want poems from you, but it is almost never me. And I say, I know, I get it. Privileged white woman, and I agree. There are voices less heard than mine, voices more important than mine, stories bigger than mine. I say, let me lead you to the places where they will love your voice and break like a wave at the curb. In 1868, Black lives began to matter for their whole worth. In 1867, ugly laws, like whispers, spread across this country, banning the disabled from public view unless otherwise deemed entertaining. This ugliness still existed 6 years before my birth, so I hope, at least, to entertain you. I say I am here for all who are otherwise othered. Say I will always stand up for them. Well, maybe not stand. All I ask is that someone stand for me, for my other, my group, the one on the sidelines or at the back of the theater, because disability is still an afterthought. Because access was not law until 2 years before I required it, and 30 years later, still not enforced. You say, we want to open the door to your experience, but the door is not wide enough. Thank you.
Hear what the Holy Spirit is telling God's people.
Thanks be to God.
Of our Savior Jesus Christ according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
After Jesus crossed over by boat, a large crowd met him at the seaside. One of the meeting place leaders named Jairus came. When he saw Jesus, he fell to his knees beside himself as he begged, "My dear daughter is at death's door. Come and lay hands on her so she will get well and live." Jesus went with him, the whole crowd tagging along, pushing and jostling him. A woman who had suffered a condition of hemorrhaging for 12 years, a long succession of physicians had treated her and treated her badly, taking all her money and leaving her worse off than before, had heard about Jesus. She slipped in from behind and touched his robe. She was thinking to herself, if I can put a finger on his robe, I can get well. The moment she did it, the flow of blood dried up. She could feel the change and knew her plague was over and done with. At that same moment, Jesus felt energy discharging from him. He turned around to the crowd and asked, "Who touched my robe?" His disciples said, "What are you talking about? With this crowd pushing and jostling you, you're asking who touched me? Dozens have touched you." But he went on asking, looking around to see who had done it. The woman, knowing what had happened, knowing she was the one, stepped up in fear and trembling, knelt before him and gave him the whole story. Jesus said to her, "Daughter, you took a risk of faith and now you're healed and whole. Live well. Live blessed. Be healed of your plague." And while he was still talking, some people came from the leader's house and told him, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" Jesus overheard what they were talking about and said to the leader, "Don't listen to them, just trust me." He permitted no one to go in with him except Peter, James, and John. They entered the leader's house and pushed their way through the gossips, looking for a story, and neighbors bringing in casseroles. Jesus was abrupt. "Why all this busybody, grief, and gossip? This child isn't dead, she's sleeping." Provoked to sarcasm, they told him he didn't know what he was talking about. But when he sent them all out, he took the child's father and mother along with his companions and entered the child's room. He clasped the girl's hand and said, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." At that, she was up and walking around. This girl was 12 years of age. They, of course, were all beside themselves with joy. He gave them strict orders that no one was to know what had taken place in that room. Then he said, "Give her something to eat." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. Please be seated. As I introduce our speaker, I want to make a connection with the gospel story because, that's what you pay me to do. so I want to, you give a minister a microphone, and there you go. But I want to say, there's two very powerful healing stories in this gospel. But what I find to be more powerful, more important, is the restoration in community. The restoration in community. We had the woman go, be well, be blessed, be a blessing. Use now your gifts to be with others. And then with the child, get her something to eat. What more community is there but food, right? We'll enjoy that after this service. Feed her, restore her, restore her. And that's actually what today is about. Restoration to the proper places of what God's intention of our life together should be. And I invite Mark Himes to come and speak to us about his community, the Disability Network.
Good. Okay. Microphone's there, perfect. Oh, this should work out. Okay, everybody
Yeah, that's great.
good? Perfect, wonderful. I just need to make sure this works. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate of course, the invitation and the opportunity to speak with you this morning on disability pride. And I think that's something that I have recently become more acquainted with. So it's going to be a very interesting talk today, I think, this morning at least. So I want to give a little history, of course. Disability Pride, the first event took place in Boston in 1990 after the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. After that, there was a first Disability Pride parade in Chicago in 2004. And then to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act was the first ever official Disability Pride Month. And after that, it basically took off by storm, I would say, at least according to my research. And I know our organization, Disability Network, has been doing a Disability Pride event every year on the 26th of July around the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's kind of exciting. But this year, according to the American Bar Association, where I got this one quote from here, is that Disability Pride Month is an opportunity for people with disabilities to be their authentic selves and to embrace their disabilities. Also to reject internalized ableism and all those negative things that come with people thinking that people with disabilities can't do certain things. So let's see, lastly here too, it's because, and then according to them too as well, as it's a part of our natural hold on. I'll make sure I got this right. I apologize. Academic diversity. So I want to make sure I don't misquote myself. It's a beautiful part of our natural human diversity. So that's the American Bar Association for you. So then basically why we're here, we're honoring the achievements and also struggles, of course. And we also want to recognize that there's more that must be done to for full community inclusion of people with disabilities. According to the ARC this year, 2024, there's a theme for Disability Pride Month, and it's "We want a life like yours," which I think is a very powerful statement. I'll come back to that a little bit later here in my talk. So let's paint a picture, right? We have some beautiful, wonderful, talented artists in the room. Of course, Megan Braun and Alex Choi. We also have Isabella Mansfield too, with that wonderful poem. So I wanted to try to paint a picture for you about how I see things through my eyes. My picture has always been dimmer than everyone else's. Sometimes things seem a lot darker. When we're in a dimly lit room, things are black, impossible for me to see, hard to navigate. So now imagine yourself sitting down to a nice fancy dinner at one of these, probably I'd say the one that comes close to mind right now would either be the Brighton Bar and Grill, probably, because those it's pretty dim and lit, or darkly, or pretty dimly lit in there. They like that ambiance feel, but I don't feel like that's a very appropriate thing for me. But sometimes I'm up for that challenge. So let's, so as I'm carefully reaching around and only lit by candlelight, and that's the only thing I can see. I don't even know if there's a napkin or a water glass on my table. It's even almost impossible for me to recognize my wife across the table from myself because it's so dark. So I carefully reach out for my water glass and hope that I don't knock it over, because that's happened before and it's embarrassing, that's for sure. Also, too, I find my nicely, neatly rolled silverware in a beautiful cloth napkin. So I'm kind of all set with where things are right now. Now I grab the menu and I grab my digital magnifier, which I actually did forget to charge today too. So the battery did die, unfortunately. So I can't read the menu now. So I have to ask my wife to read the menu for me. And that's a little embarrassing sometimes, to ask for help. But over the years, I've been comfortable with doing that and being able to do that. So now, after a little bit of frustration, things are a little bit clearer. I was able to make my order. Everything is good. But then the food arrives, and it's still dark. The only candlelight that I see is that flickering flame, but no food. I see I can feel the plate. So I asked once again to have my wife describe where those things are on the plate. The steak's on the right, the potatoes are on the left, asparagus is on the top. Gosh, asparagus, come on. That's like the worst kind of thing to eat, especially at a fancy restaurant. Like, how do you cut it up, or how do you eat it? So, I mean, it's dark enough in there, so I could probably get away with picking it up and eating it that way. Sometimes that's what you gotta do, unfortunately. But it is, I felt comfortable with doing that, so I think, I can make sure I covered what I did. Yes. So everything's located now, and I'm digging into this delicious meal, so of course that's gonna be great. When my wife is not around and I'm exploring the world and she's unavailable or working, of course, because we all have jobs, I have Bogey, my guide dog, who did guide me up here. He prefers her more over me, I think, sometimes, most days. And but we've explored the world. He's become an extension of myself to help me guide me around. And he's my first guide dog, so it's very special to me. We've been working about 8 years now. You know, we have endured some of the great times, of course, like he was at my wife and I's our rehearsal dinner, and he actually came on the little mini honeymoon we did afterwards, and he got served off of a silver platter. So I think he got spoiled pretty good during that time as well. Of course, snoozing during my community meetings, my conversations, you'll always find him sleeping, which is great. Wandering around the Renaissance Festival, and of course splashing around at Lake Superior, which is his favorite lake because it's the coldest and he enjoys it. We've also had to endure some of the bad times, some of the scary times, like flying on an airplane, taking the bus, any type of bus, Let's bus, the city bus, the Michigan Flyer bus. Those are scary times for him. And also getting his tail stepped on, and things like boxes falling over or thunderstorms. That's scary. And then also, of course, the last really terrifying thing that really still probably pains us to this day is getting hit by a car in a crosswalk. That was not a good time. But without him, I wouldn't probably have had so many doors open for me. I think his face says it all. He is just the most adorable thing ever. So I think that cuteness right there is really, really the one that's going to keep us going from now. So let's see here, open doors. So let me take it back a little bit too. So for the longest time, I felt ashamed of my disability, my visual impairment, and I've been in denial of my vision getting worse, which it's unfortunately the reality and it's a truth. But I've been able to be resilient off of it and come to accept it in ways. But I've also learned certain tips and tricks and tools. Of course, being able to ask for help too is an important piece that I've always said that is what I need to continue to put forward. So let's see here. I want to make sure I got it right. So, I mean, I'm aware of my limitations and abilities, but I've also accepted myself and accepted that things are going to be challenging and everything is going to be okay. So I've also noticed too that taking it back to kind of having a life, taking it back to the art quote of having a life like yours or living a life like yours is that we all make mistakes and we all may fail and we all may try to do things, but what if we do succeed with those opportunities that we take, those risks that we take? What if we do succeed? I mean, yes, there's an opportunity where it could go the other way, but everybody does that. Everybody goes through that. And I think that our perseverance that we have, people with disabilities, everybody else too, to work towards having a more continue to try to where you need to go as and sometimes we need accommodations, we need help, we need assistance, sometimes we don't. And it's just so much more rewarding to be able to find that out and not have things handed to us. We want to own a home. We want to maybe own a dog or two, or a cat or two. And be able to have a job and contribute to society. So that's also why I'm very thankful for finding a loving wife, being able to have a beautiful guide dog, have a good support system, but then also to embrace myself, embrace my disability. That when you learn to accept yourself for who you are, then you can truly be starting to live. So sometimes we go through things and we can learn from each other, and this is going to be such a great event today too, Disability Pride Month, kicking it off early on June 30th, which is great. So I appreciate the time for having me talk here today and present to you all about Disability Pride. You can find myself and my wife Shannon at the Disability Network table downstairs, and thank you everybody, I appreciate you all.